Hi, True Crew. How you doing? Welcome back to another episode. If you're new, don't forget to check out the website. Get your free downloads on setting goals, fitness, and nutrition. And if you like it, don't forget to subscribe. Because here we are putting the healing back in health, mind, body, and spirit. So coming at you today with this concept I heard the other day of a steady eye makes for a steady mind. And a steady hand makes for a steady heart. And this was KRS-One. I mentioned him a few times in my videos. He's definitely not Catholic or Christian. He's more of a spiritual person, maybe more towards like ancient Egypt type stuff. But very interesting thought, so I wanted to talk about it a little bit. And he didn't talk about it in too much detail that I remember, so I wanted to talk about it a little bit here. So in reality, I think it meant it's true. And it also can come into a lot of conspiracy theories after that. And and even in the Bible, Jesus says, take the speck out of your own eye before you try to take it out of someone else's. So once again, it's getting a true vision of reality, I would say, right? True vision of yourself, true vision of reality. And that's the unfortunate thing with relativism today, is because we forget that there is reality. We can't just create our own reality. When you create your own realities, once again, you are not freeing yourself. You are enslaving yourself within this thought of yourself. So, steady eye, steady mind. And I think when you look into the research, they're starting to say now that our attention span is dropping like crazy. Like we're almost to our attention span is almost that of like a goldfish, right? To where they say when they get to one side, they already forget what happened on the other side. Once they get to one side of the tank, they've already forgot the other side. And they're going back and forth. And that's happened to me a lot when I was younger. Like you could read a page and you don't even remember what you read, right? And just to help with that, I've heard what I do and what everyone says you should do is like mark stuff, right? Take the time to just stop and reread things even. But for me, I do that, like I'll mark stuff and then I'll use it for inspirational quotes on my Facebook and Twitter and things like that, right? But once again, that's how they get us with all this, Twitter, the horrible thing, 140 characters. I hate when I put a tweet out there about a video that I have about Christianity or just a thought, and then an atheist will come on and try to have this whole big discussion. It's like, are you kidding me? 140 characters. We're not going to be, it's like, gee, it's like a text message now. It's even more limited than a text message. It's like, nah, man, if you want something, at least go to Facebook or something, or go to my video itself and write a freaking book in the comment box. Don't try to argue with me over 140 characters, right? That same concept of now, the difficulty is trying to have those conversations over text message. That thing's horrible as well. It's like, just call me if it's something like that. What are we doing tonight? Well, do you want to go out to movie, or do you want to go to to dinner? Or do you want to do both? What movie? What this? What that? Da-da-da, da-da-da. Things happen. People stop responding to the text message. Are they mad? Are they this? No, just make the freaking phone call, And I've heard it said best the other week. I was listening to something, and they said the reason why people prefer nowadays text message versus a phone call is because a phone call brings surprise. You never know what's going to be asked. Versus a text message, you can sit there and think like, ooh, what's the perfect comeback? What can I do? What can I do, right? What can I say here? Versus if it's a surprise, you have nothing to say. And I think that comes to another video I was going to say of that uncomfortable silence, right? You feel like you have to be quick and witty, and you might not be quick and witty. But in reality, it's okay to pause and be silent and gather your thoughts. But in today's world, we are afraid to be silent. What are people thinking? What's going on? Oh my goodness, I need to say something. You panic, right? Steady eye, steady mind. And it makes sense, right? Because I think something he brought up was that's why back in the day they wouldn't tell you you could read or you could write. And in reality, we all know that you're going to gain more knowledge from reading books than you're ever going to from a TV. Right? That's when they always say the book is better than the movie. Because you can't, in the book, you have to imagine the scenery. You have to do these things. Versus a movie, it's just given to you. You just see it. It's somebody else's vision, right? It's limiting your own creativity versus a book, you get to imagine it. Like they can try to describe it, or they might not even, they might leave out details. So now you have to create those details of the scenario, what the room looks like, what the chair looks like. You know, same thing with football when they say, you know, deep route, we got one guy cutting right, one guy going down. Or if you listen to sports on the radio, right, now you have to actually imagine it. You have to imagine the play evolving as the commentator is saying it. That's why when truly it comes down to a game, I like the high seats because I can see the play develop. You can see the routes they run. So you get a better vision of the game, right? So let's see, I think I wanted to go into more detail there, but I'm going to end it like that, right? Once again, it's you get a bit of better perspective on life. Your imagination is used more. All these different things versus it's just given to you. Like, you know, TV and stuff like that can kind of be like mental garbage for your eyes. And in reality, I think sometimes that you can get that sensory overload even with books, but more so with TV and things like that. That's why sometimes, have you ever heard the term like I just need to rest my eyes? I used to do that a lot when I was younger. Like people would think I was sleeping, not younger, but you know, early 20s, and I would just be resting my eyes. It's like, oh man, just like my eyes hurt. I need to rest my eyes, and I would never sleep. I would just lay there with my eyes closed, right? And that in a way itself is kind of a spiritual practice. Just being able to be with your eyes closed and not fall asleep. That in itself is a spiritual practice, right? And I think in reality, that's why now we got the VR and all these things, because they want to take the world away from you and create something false and give you a false view, a false identity of life, right? But I've heard it said best, no matter what virtual reality does, there's always going to be, I was watching a Joe Rogan podcast, and this guy said, no matter what, they will never truly be able to mentally trick you and confuse you with virtual reality, because there's always going to be something that will give it away. Whether it would actually be running a test on something, they'll be able to give it away. Because you cannot, he said, you cannot create a perfect version of something within its own reality, right? So you're trying to create virtual reality, well, you can't create the perfect imitation of it within reality. Same thing like when they say you try to create, scientists are trying to explain God, well, you can't because he's not of this reality, right? God's not a part of this universe. So there's no way, shape, or form that there is a test to find that. Right? Now, he can find this, but we'll never be able to find that. And I think that actually contradicts what I just said, but think of it that way, right? We can never find something that's not outside of this reality, is what it's coming down to. So, now, steady hand, steady heart. Steady hand, steady heart. Now, I think this is true in the sense that, and verbally, but we'll go with steady hand, right? Because that's how you express yourself, right? You express yourself through writing. Your feelings, whatever the case may be. You express that through writing, which in what we just said, right? You create the writing, now we read. That's why they're so connected, right? Because not only you have the power to create something, but then you make someone else think, right? So you make them more intelligent by sometimes leaving out details, making them think it themselves, versus the movie will give you those details. But that's one true way to understand yourself, through writing, through speaking. Someone else speaks. Even when you go to court, someone else speaks and you write and they type it, right? But once again, it's a true way to express your feelings and your emotions, or even better yet, understand your emotions and your feelings. And in doing that, you truly get to know yourself more. So in order to strengthen your heart, you must write. But in order to become more intellectually aware of yourself, mindful of yourself, you have to read it. Right? Or that's why diaries are so great. That's why the only way to truly understand someone, why do people think it's such a grave sin against them to read their diary? It's their deepest thoughts. But that's because you truly get into their heart, not this BS vision of themselves that they get you that everybody is perfect, right? That's kind of all Facebook and social media really is, the BS. Steady hand, steady heart. Now, once again, he talked about that's why they wouldn't let you write. And I think this is that confusion as well that we get of people saying that the Catholic Church didn't want people to write and didn't want them to read because it made it more difficult or to control the masses, right? But in reality, I think that difficult thing is maybe with the writing I could see. Not even with that, I don't understand. Let me get back to that thought. But in reality, I think the reason why the church, or the difficulty, they say the Bible is horrible because it has been corrupted by man, right? But in reality, it's not man that's corrupted, it's the corruption of language, right? Because that's why if you go back, right, language is simpler and simpler. When you go back to Aramaic, there's no vowels, they say, right? So it's a very simple form, in its purest form. So it's not that it's tainted because of man, it's just tainted because language has become tainted throughout the years. Like they even say if you watch a video on English back in, 1,000 years ago to English now, it's completely different. Like you're like, what? That's English? That doesn't even make sense. The English of Shakespeare is completely different to the English that we have. Right? So it's that confusion. It's man creating slang to confuse the language, right? Now you can say something's bunk, you can say let's get crunk, we're woke, whatever. These things are confusing. And it's the same concept they're doing now in schools with Common Core, where I've watched my niece back in the day try to do math, and I was looking at it like, this is freaking crazy. What the heck are you doing? Do it this way. And my cousin even said, I told her to do it that way. She did it that way. It's easier for her, but then when she went to school, she got an F because she didn't do it the way people were saying. So in reality, they're trying to teach you new forms of mathematics, and then so the children look at their parents like, you don't know this? You're stupid. It's like, well, no, I'm not stupid. They just changed everything. It's completely different. It doesn't make any sense, right? If it's not broke, don't fix it. And then all of a sudden we want to call that culture. Culture is confusing and dividing us. Steady hand, steady heart. And I guess that makes sense, right? There's like people that put their hands up and then they're really shaky, right? If you can't stand there and have a calm hand, they'll say that's your nerves. Could that be your heart? Are you questioning things? Right? You have to have that steady hand. So once again, that does mean that there is something internally wrong with you if you are shaky, right? You're detoxing. So what if you're shaky and you're not even on drugs? You're not even on alcohol. Well, what's wrong? There's something uneasy in you. There's something wrong. And I had a lot more, but then I got distracted. I was doing so much other stuff. Or I heard an interview where, or now they're trying to distort our vision, and now to where people will only communicate with emojis, right? Will only communicate with emojis. Now, doesn't it get to a point in life now where we say we do not respect animals or we do not understand them because they can't speak to us, right? Like if we were feeding them, they would actually, the things we do to our animals, they would actually tell us what's wrong with them. That's what they say is the downfall even of a veterinarian, is they're working with a patient that can't have a conversation with them and tell them what's wrong. In reality, that's what they're slowly doing to us. They're eliminating speech, right? I've heard Kanye West say in an interview that eventually we'll just think, right? We'll just think. But in reality, everybody thinks differently. So if we get to a point to where it's this ESP type of conversation and you don't understand the concept of their type of thinking, right? Just like now there's 50 different ways to perform, not 50, but the great thing about my math teacher growing up is he gave you 4 different ways to create the answer, And as long as you showed your work, it was all right. Because I went to a math class that was all word problems when I switched high schools. And I'm horrible with word problems, so it was really confusing. And I did poorly in that math class, but that's not because I was bad at math. I loved math before that. It was my favorite subject. But when I got into that, it was just confusing as heck. Instead of it just being a diagram, they would show this story. Instead of it just being like a triangle, from here to here is this many feet. If it goes this many feet, what's the bottom, right? That's a triangle. But to them, it was a word problem of, if you shoot a rocket up at a degree angle of 45 degrees and it travels 375 feet, at what point is it going to reach its pinnacle? And then at what point when it hits the ground, how far is that going to be as well? Its max distance. That was difficult for me to understand versus let's just see a triangle and everything's good, right? So, in reality though, what if there was some form of other beings, or here, the government, all of a sudden can no longer comprehend your thought process, and it's just as easy to say, well, we communicate through ASP, this guy's speaking something I don't even know, he can't express himself, off him, and treat him horribly, let's enslave him like we treat the animals in our slaughterhouses, right? Now I'm just getting way off. I think I've been mumbling a lot. But once again, I want you to think about that. I want you to think of steady eye, steady mind, steady heart, steady hand. And I thought that was really interesting. And I think it is that same concept of once they can take the visual reality away from you, books away from you, have you more dependent on things to look at electronics, things are going to start to fall apart, right? When they take away writing and speaking that go hand in hand, it creates more dangers than it does good at all. It creates more issues, more problems. So, I don't know. Let me know your thoughts on that. Comment down below. It's just a lot of craziness in that one concept of easy eye, steady eye, steady mind, steady heart, steady hand. So once again, True Crew, I hope this helps. Remember, let's heal. Let's become healthy in every way, shape, or form. Don't forget to follow on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Google+. The podcast is out there. Subscribe to this channel. Share and like these videos.